Bashar al-Assad. December 8, 2024. A president vanishes in one night. Bashar al-Assad. 50 years of his family in power. By morning, rebels stood inside his palace. Assad wasn't there. He was already gone. A Russian jet took off from Latakia that night. Inside it, Assad, his wife Asma, 3 children. No warning to his own brother Mar. Mar stayed in Damascus until the final hour. The plane landed in Moscow before dawn. The Kremlin called it asylum on humanitarian grounds. Assad had ruled Syria since the year 2000. He trained as an eye doctor in London. His father's sudden death pulled him into politics instead. His older brother Basil was meant to rule, not him. A car crash in 1994 killed Basil and changed everything. In 2011, protests broke out across the country. Assad's answer was tanks, barrel bombs, and prison cells. One prison, Saddam, became known as the human slaughterhouse. Thousands were reportedly hanged there in secret over the years. The war that followed lasted almost 14 years. More than 600,000 people were killed. Nearly 14 million fled their homes. Then, in just 11 days, rebels took the entire country. 8 days later, Assad broke his silence. "I never considered stepping down," his statement claimed. By then, nobody in Damascus was listening. In Moscow, the family checked into the Four Seasons. A suite there cost $13,000 a week. One aide followed him without even a passport. Weeks later, Assad stopped answering his calls. The aide was left with a hotel bill he couldn't pay. From the hotel, the family moved to Federation Tower, then to a private villa in Rubliovka. Assad's daughter joined an elite gym and a pedicure salon. His son Hafez studied at a top Moscow university. In February, Hafez posted a video near the Kremlin. He described the family's panicked escape from Syria. Assad's wife, Asma, reportedly battled leukemia in a Moscow hospital. Assad himself has barely been seen since. He isn't even allowed to appear in public. Putin, sources say, has lost interest in him completely. One Kremlin insider called him not even an interesting guest. So Assad studies Russian and retakes his old medical courses. A man who ruled 14 million people now studies alone. But Assad wasn't even close to the deadliest name on this list. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin ruled the Soviet Union for 3 decades. Historians still argue over how many people he killed. Most estimates land between 6 and 20 million. He was born Ioseb Jugashvili in Georgia in 1878. His father was a violent, drunken shoemaker. As a young man, he trained for the priesthood. He was expelled and turned to revolution instead. He robbed banks to fund the party in his youth. By 1922, he controlled the Communist Party's machinery. Lenin warned others about him before he died. The warning changed nothing. By 1929, Stalin stood alone at the top. He forced millions of farmers onto collective land. Those who resisted were shot or sent east. In Ukraine, the famine that followed killed millions. It's remembered today as the Holodomor. In 1937, Stalin turned on his own party. He signed execution lists by the thousands. Generals, poets, neighbors, old friends, all disappeared. Nobody was safe, not even his closest allies. Even his own wife Nadezhda died under strange circumstances in 1932. Historians call this period the Great Terror. In 1941, Hitler broke their pact and invaded. Stalin locked himself away for 11 days. He returned and ordered total resistance at any cost. His own son Yakov was captured by the Germans. Stalin refused to trade a captured marshal to save him. Yakov died in a German camp soon after. The Soviet Union lost over 26 million people in that war. By 1945, Stalin stood among the war's victors. He controlled half of Europe within a decade. In his final years, he grew even more paranoid. He accused his own doctors of plotting to kill him. On March 1, 1953, he collapsed on his bedroom floor. His guards found him hours later, unable to speak. No one dared call a doctor without permission. He lay there for most of a day before help came. He died 4 days later, on March 5th. Millions of Soviets openly wept in the streets. Some are crushed to death in the crowds mourning him. Decades later, his crimes finally reached the history books. But his statues still stand in a few former republics today. Kim Jong-un. Halfway around the world, a much younger dictator studies him closely. Kim Jong-un has ruled North Korea since 2011. He inherited power from his father at only 27. His grandfather founded the country in 1948. 3 generations of one family have ruled it since. Kim executed his own uncle within 2 years of taking power. State media called it treason and corruption. In 2017, his half-brother was poisoned in a Malaysian airport. 2 women smeared VX nerve agent on his face. He died within 20 minutes. Kim has never confirmed he ordered it. In 2017, an American student, Otto Warmbier, was arrested for taking a poster. He was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. He returned home a year later in a coma. He died 6 days after arriving back in the U.S. Under Kim's rule, prison camps still hold over 100,000 people. Satellite images show the camps growing, not shrinking. Meanwhile, his weapons program keeps testing new missiles. In 2017, one missile flew directly over Japan. By 2022, he claimed the country had usable nuclear weapons. His own people, meanwhile, face regular food shortages. Escapees describe eating grass and tree bark to survive. Kim, by contrast, is estimated to weigh over 300 pounds. He owns a private train with its own karaoke room. He also keeps a fleet of luxury yachts and sports cars. His sister Kim Yo-jong now speaks publicly for the regime. She's often more openly aggressive in her statements than he is. In 2018, he crossed into South Korea to shake a president's hand. It was the first time a North Korean leader had done it. The peace talks that followed went nowhere in the end. Kim is still in power today, one of the world's youngest dictators. Saddam Hussein. In Iraq, another dictator's fall was caught entirely on camera. Saddam Hussein ruled Iraq for over 2 decades. He took full power in a bloody party purge in 1979. He filmed the executions and sent the tape to every province. In 1980, he launched a war against Iran that lasted 8 years. 500,000 people died on both sides combined. In 1988, he used chemical weapons on his own Kurdish citizens. 5,000 civilians died in the town of Halabja alone. In 1990, he invaded Kuwait, and the world turned against him. Retreating troops set hundreds of oil wells on fire. A U.S.-led coalition pushed his army out within weeks. He survived 12 more years, ruling through fear and secret police. His sons Uday and Qusay were known for their own brutality. In 2003, American forces invaded again, chasing weapons that didn't exist. His statue in Baghdad was pulled down within weeks. His sons died in a gun battle with U.S. troops that July. Saddam himself vanished into hiding. For 9 months, nobody could find him. On December 13, 2003, soldiers found a hole near his hometown. Saddam was hiding inside it, alone, with a pistol and cash. A soldier famously said, "Regards from President Bush." His trial began the following year, broadcast across Iraq. He was charged with crimes against humanity into jail. 148 villagers had been executed there in 1982. In November 2006, the court sentenced him to death. On December 30th, 2006, he was led to the gallows. Guards recorded the execution on their phones. Voices in the crowd taunted him as the rope tightened. The leaked footage spread across the world within hours. A man who once filmed his enemies dying was now the one on camera. Benito Mussolini. Decades earlier, another dictator's body ended up hanging in public too. Benito Mussolini ruled Italy for over 20 years. He founded fascism itself in 1919. In 1922, he marched on Rome and forced the king to name him leader. He called himself Il Duce, the leader. In 1924, his critics accused him of ordering a rival's murder. He crushed every opposition party within a few years after. In 1935, he invaded Ethiopia with tanks and poison gas. Hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians died in that war. In 1938, he passed racial laws stripping Jewish Italians of their rights. In 1940, he joined Hitler and dragged Italy into World War. The alliance turned into a disaster within 3 years. In 1943, his own party voted to remove him from power. The king had him arrested that same night. German commandos freed him from a mountain prison weeks later. Hitler propped him up as a puppet ruler in the north. By April 1945, that puppet state was collapsing fast. Mussolini tried to flee north, disguised as a German soldier. Italian partisans stopped his convoy near Lake Como. They recognized him instantly, despite the disguise. He was shot the next day, alongside his mistress Clara Petacci. Their bodies were driven to Milan overnight. A crowd hung them upside down at a gas station square. People spat, threw stones, and beat the corpse with sticks. The same square where fascists had executed partisans a year before. Il Duce ended his rule the way many of his victims had. Idi Amin. Not every dictator on this list met a violent end, though. Idi Amin ruled Uganda for 8 brutal years. He seized power in a military coup in 1971. He'd been a boxing champion before entering the army. As dictator, he ordered the deaths of political rivals by the thousands. Estimates range from 100,000 to 500,000 people killed. In 1972, he expelled the country's entire Asian population. Around 80,000 people had 90 days to leave. Their businesses and homes were handed to Amin's own supporters. He gave himself absurd titles, including Conqueror of the British Empire. Rumors spread that he kept the heads of enemies in his fridge. He was never proven to be a literal cannibal, though. In 1976, his soldiers hijacked a plane full of hostages. Amin personally visited the hijacked hostages inside the terminal. Israeli commandos raided the airport days later at night. They freed nearly all the hostages in under an hour. The raid embarrassed Amin badly in front of the world. In 1979, he invaded neighboring Tanzania and lost badly. Tanzanian forces marched all the way to Kampala. Amin fled the country before the capital fell. He spent a year in Libya under Gaddafi's protection. Then Saudi Arabia offered him permanent exile instead. He lived there for over 2 decades, unpunished. He reportedly spent his days fishing and watching old movies. He never faced trial for a single one of his crimes. In 2003, he died quietly in a Saudi hospital of kidney failure. He was 78 and free until his very last breath. Kim Jong-un. In North Korea, one Kim's death looked nothing like Amin's. Kim Jong-un ruled North Korea for 17 years. He took over from his father Kim Il-sung in 1994. He built a personality cult even bigger than his father's. State media claimed he was born under a double rainbow. In reality, he was likely born in a Soviet military camp. Under his rule, a famine killed hundreds of thousands in the 1990s. Meanwhile, he kept a personal collection of foreign luxury cars. He also reportedly loved Hennessy cognac and Hollywood films. He kidnapped a South Korean director to build his own film industry. The director was held for 8 years before escaping. His agents also kidnapped ordinary Japanese citizens off beaches. Some are forced to teach Japanese to North Korean spies. Kim Jong-un continued the country's nuclear weapons program too. In 2006, North Korea tested its first nuclear device. By 2008, his health began to visibly decline. He reportedly suffered a stroke that year, kept secret from the public. On December 17, 2011, he died of a heart attack. State television said it happened on his private train. The announcement came 2 days later, with the anchor in tears. Crowds across the country wailed in scripted, coordinated grief. His body was embalmed and placed on permanent display. His son Kim Jong-un inherited power within weeks. Francisco Fran. In Spain, one dictator managed to die peacefully in his own bed. Francisco Franco ruled Spain for nearly 40 years. He rose to power through a brutal civil war. The war lasted 3 years, from 1936 to 1939. Around 500,000 people died in that conflict. Hitler and Mussolini both sent him weapons and planes. In 1937, his allies bombed the town of Guernica Flat. After winning, Franco ruled through fear and total control. Tens of thousands of opponents were executed or imprisoned. He banned every regional language except Spanish itself. During World War II, he stayed carefully neutral. That single decision let him survive the war's end. While other fascists were hanged or shot, Franco stayed in power. By the 1950s, the West needed him against communism. The U.S. even opened military bases inside Spain itself. Franco quietly modernized the economy through the 1960s. But secret police still tracked and punished any dissent. In 1968, a new Basque separatist group, ETA, began targeting his regime. By 1969, he had already named his own successor, a king. In his final years, his health declined for months. He suffered heart attacks, internal bleeding, and Parkinson's disease. Doctors kept him alive on machines for over a month. On November 20th, 1975, he finally died at age 82. He was one of very few fascist-era dictators to die of old age. Spain became a democracy within just a few years of his death. Enver Hoxha. Not every regime opened up after its dictator died, though. Enver Hoxha ruled Albania for over 40 years. He took power leading communist partisans in World War II. By 1945, he controlled the entire country. He modeled his rule directly on Stalin's Soviet Union. He purged rivals inside his own party for decades, one by one. He broke ties with the Soviets after Stalin's death. Then he broke ties with China too in the 1970s. By the end, Albania stood almost completely alone in the world. He declared the country the world's first fully atheist state. Every mosque and church in the country was shut down. He built over 170,000 concrete bunkers across the tiny country. That's roughly one bunker for every 17 citizens. He feared an invasion that never actually came. His secret police, the Sigurimi, watched almost everyone. Tens of thousands were sent to forced labor camps. Ordinary Albanians couldn't own private cars or leave the country. Foreign travel required permission almost nobody was ever granted. By the 1980s, Haja rarely appeared in public at all. He suffered from diabetes and worsening heart disease. On April 11th, 1985, he died in Tirana at age 76. He was never put on trial and never fled anywhere. The system he built barely outlived him by a few years. By 1991, protesters tore his statue down in the capital. Some of his bunkers still dot the Albanian countryside today.